Hi, welcome to Physics 4C. Just imagine you guys have made it all the way through Physics 4A, through Physics 4B, and now we're going to wrap things up. We're going to complete the whole series here in Physics 4C. My name is Alan Nickel. I'll be the instructor for the course, and I'm really looking forward to working with all of you during this course. Physics 4C, one of my favorite courses. I guess I like them all. But a lot of really interesting topics. We're going to start off looking at light, both sort of classical properties of light as well as quantum light. We'll be looking at special relativity, and then after looking at kind of the underpinnings, the foundations of quantum mechanics, we'll take those and apply them to atoms, molecules, nuclei. Some really interesting stuff ahead. I'm guessing that you guys probably have worked from this textbook, but the textbook for our course will be Giancolli's 4th edition. We'll be going over this some more in just a second here with the syllabus and the schedule and such. So we have our mascot up there behind us. That's Laney the Eagle. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's take a look at the syllabus and the schedule for the course. Welcome to Physics 4C. So what we want to do here is we want to go through the syllabus, the schedule for the course, and then there's a homework handout too that we'll be taking a look at. But welcome to Physics 4C. As already stated, my name is Dr. Alan Nickel, and what I wanted to do to start off with is maybe generate a little enthusiasm here. Is kind of a list of the major topics that we're looking at in this course, in Physics 4C. So we're going to start off in Physics 4C taking a look at light, the properties of light. Now, light's interesting in that there's kind of a, the study of light goes back thousands of years. And so there's kind of a classical approach to what light is and what its properties are. And then we're going to follow that all the way through modern quantum approaches as to what light is. And our understanding now is that light consists of particles, and those particles are called photons. And we're going to take a pretty good detailed look at the properties of photons in this course. So that's going to play a very important role. Now, once we've gotten through light for the first 4 weeks, then we're going to come back and take a look at special relativity. So it turns out that kind of a classical understanding of how space and time are all put together is not adequate. I mean, what you would say, I guess, is it's not completely correct. What we find is that we can get away with a classical approach that we've been using for, saying space is three-dimensional and time is time and time proceeds the same for everybody. But again, it turns out that's not quite true. When we look at things in detail, very carefully, we find that actually the 3 dimensions of time and the one dimension of time and the 3 dimensions of space are interconnected, and that space-time is actually a 4-dimensional structure. So time and space are kind of related to each other. Now, I don't experience time at all the way that I experience space, and yet special relativity says mathematically that is the way that space-time is put together. So we'll get a chance to go in and learn a little bit about special relativity, and then that kind of sets us up. We're going to take special relativity, and then we're going to be looking at quantum physics. So quantum physics is looking at, I want to say it's kind of the properties of particles. That's a good place to start with quantum physics. What are the properties of protons and electrons and neutrons and neutrinos and photons? And so what I've done is, you can kind of see where this is all headed. What we're really doing is we're looking kind of at the physics of fundamental particles in some sense. What are the properties of atoms and molecules and nuclei? And so those are the kind of things that we're going to be looking at in this course. Now, we're going to start off with kind of a basic list. What are these fundamental particles that make up everything? And you guys are probably familiar with protons and neutrons. Protons and neutrons are kind of the same particle. The proton is the positive version of that particle, and the neutron is the neutral version. You guys may be aware protons and neutrons have about the same mass, very similar particles. We're going to find out their reactions where protons can turn into neutrons and neutrons can turn into protons. Okay, a little later in the course. Now there's also a pair of lighter particles, and that's the electron and the neutrino. And the neutrino, in some sense, is the neutral version of the electron. We find out the neutrinos and electrons are, again, kind of the same particle. One is charged and one is neutral. Now, almost everybody's heard about protons and neutrons and electrons. Neutrinos not as common. So neutrinos don't come up as often in examples that we look at, and so sometimes students aren't as familiar, but we're going to look at all of those. And then, as I started out with, we're going to be looking at photons all through the course. So we're going to start off looking at light, talking about some of the properties of photons, and then as we look at the physics of atoms and molecules and nuclei, we'll see how those photons interact between molecules, between atoms, how they interact with the nucleus. Okay, so a lot of really interesting stuff I'm going to claim in Physics 4C. So let's take a look and see what we've got on the syllabus. So just to point out, on Canvas, if you look at the very top of the modules, and you guys apparently have found this because you found this video, if you look at the Getting Started module, there is this Getting Started video, and then there is the syllabus, the schedule, and the homework assignment. So you can, there's PDFs that are posted on Canvas, so they're right there. You could print some of those out and have a hard copy that you can work from. So, or you could just use the ones that are online. So the syllabus starts out, that's my name. I am the instructor for the course, Alan Nickel. There is my Peralta email address. And then here are office hours for the semester. So office hours are going to be the hour right before class and the hour right after class. How convenient. So, and whatever questions come up, come into office hours and stop, and we'll get those looked at. Now, I hold the office hours in the lab room. So the lab room is A274, and the lab room's pretty good sized. And so that means that when office hours are going on, you don't have to wait to come into the room with your questions. You can just come in and sit down. You know, if I'm already talking with another student, just come on in and sit down, and then we'll figure out a way to get everybody's questions answered. So it's a good place to just come in before class or stay around after class and maybe form some study groups, or maybe be working on homework problems, meet up with other students. So the office hours before and after work really well. So we've had that ongoing for a number of years now. Now, prerequisites for the course. Officially, you are supposed to have completed Physics 4A and Physics 4B. You're supposed to have completed both of those courses. If there's any questions about prereqs, let me know. And we'll see if, you know, given your background, maybe there's a prereq that you haven't officially met, but all signs point towards you being successful in Physics 4C. And then we'll see what we can do about putting together a request to bypass the prereqs. But you really do. I mean, you've got to have some kind of a physics background coming into the course. And what we recommend is Physics 4A and Physics 4B. In fact, what we require officially. In terms of math, you are supposed to have completed Math 3A, 3B, and 3C. So you're supposed to be all the way through, what is it, multivariable calculus. And then what, you know, as you guys know, you guys are the experts. So you guys are Physics 4C students, so you've been taking physics and you successfully completed 4A and 4B. And that means you guys are the experts as to what it takes to get through a physics course, right? And what you guys know is that in physics, what we tend to do is we kind of pick and choose the math topics that are important for us. So it turns out that within physics, it's not like the whole everything in calculus gets used in although a lot of it does. But what we tend to do is pick and choose different topics from calculus that are important to us. Now, if you've been taking the 4A, 4B, 4 series here at Laney, then you know that each semester we start looking at more detailed calculus. Physics 4A, it showed up intermittently, and Physics 4B, it was showing up more frequently, and in Physics 4C, it's going to show up even more. Now, we're also going to be looking at a little bit of linear algebra. Turns out to be very useful, but you know, don't. I'm going to say right now, don't panic about that. In fact, don't panic at all. What we'll do in the course is, for the calculus topics, or for that little bit of linear algebra that we take a look at, we'll support that in the course. So we'll go through and make sure that you're good to go with whatever we're asking for you to do in homework problems. And the linear algebra, for example, is more just a way of presenting the material. I don't think you're required to do any of that on any of the homework or any of the exams. Okay, it's just an option. And it's a way of presenting actually topics in special relativity a little more clearly, a little more compactly, with a better overview. Let's see, what else do we have going on here? The textbook is Physics for Scientists and Engineers, and I think I just held that up earlier. With Modern Physics, Giancoli. Now, we are still using the 4th edition, and that is only sensible because you guys started out with the 4th edition. Now, there is a 5th edition out there now that's available, but we don't, certainly for this course, we're going to stay with the 4th edition. We're going to stay with the 4th edition for the next several semesters. There's a lot of those out there. I've looked at the 5th edition. It's basically the 4th edition. So as you guys know, the physics that gets presented in 4A, 4B, and 4C has been pretty firmly in place now for a good while. And so often these updates to these new editions are just kind of moving around information and topics and homework problems that were present in the previous editions. The lectures for our class, Monday and Wednesday, 10 a.m. to 11:50 a.m. Those are going to be in room A273. Kind of a miraculous construction project went on this summer, but everything looks like it's going to be finished up in time to be back in our classrooms for the beginning of fall semester. So that's very good news. The labs are going to be Wednesday afternoon. Now on Wednesdays after class, I've tried following right up with a lab immediately after, but that always impacted lunch. And so what I've done is I've reserved, or I've set aside that hour. There's an hour for lunch. And so lab actually won't be starting up until 1 p.m. and that'll run until 3:50 p.m. So that's going to be the lab time. And that's going to be in room A274. All right. All right. For homework, there's going to be an assignment for each chapter. Those of you who have taken 4A and 4B in my courses, this is going to look very familiar. So here is each of the chapters. Here are the assignments, the homework, specifically the homework assignment for those chapters. Now, the homework problems aren't the whole story, as you guys know, because you're Physics 4C students. As you read through the textbook, there are going to be examples that are presented in the textbook. In lecture, we're going to be looking at a lot of examples in lecture. Those examples are all going to be important. The examples we look at in class, the examples that are in the textbook, and then these homework problems. Now, I have specifically gone in and picked out this set of homework problems because I feel like with this set of homework problems, each of the topics that's very important to us will be looked at. Okay, so if you have a good understanding of the principles, not just can I duplicate these problems, but if you have an understanding of the principles behind them, so that if you're, introduced to a similar kind of example, making use of the same principles, are you able to set those up and successfully reach some kind of a result for those examples? Okay, and again, we'll be looking at a lot of examples in class, and and you guys are Physics 4C students, so you're familiar with how this process goes. Let's see. Labs, it's going to be important for you to attend and participate in the labs. We're going to have lab partners. My guess right now is that there will be somewhere between 3, 4, and maybe 5 people in a lab group. We mostly have 6 setups. We'll divide into 6 groups often, but sometimes there's only 5 or sometimes only 4 setups. So we'll combine differently for those as needed. And those will be each week. Now, we've talked about lectures and we've talked about labs and how that all works. So this is actually maybe a good time to kind of introduce what's going on Canvas. So as you guys know, we have gone through a pandemic. We're still kind of up in the air about where are things in terms of the pandemic. So during the pandemic, what I ended up doing was I put together a complete set of lectures and a complete set of video labs. So the video lectures, for each one of the chapters, I've got 2 or 3 or 4 video lectures that go along with that chapter. And then there's a set of slides, a set of notes that you can follow along with. Now, what that provides in terms of resources is if some kind of an emergency situation comes up. If, let's say that you test positive for COVID and you are not allowed to come onto campus for a week or whatever the protocol is currently, that's going to allow you to work remotely. Now, the course itself is really going to be based on what we say in the classroom, but the lectures that are online are going to be very similar. They're certainly going to be covering the same topics. So, and then the other possibility that the administration continues to remind us of is that we're supposed to have all of our courses now set up in a manner where if a pandemic hit, if some kind of an emergency came up where we actually had to shut down the campus classes, that we would be able to go remote. And so if you take a look at Canvas, you'll see everything's there. And so what I've put together is a set of lectures that take us all the way through all the topics, all the chapters of Physics 4C. And then if you scroll down farther, sometimes students don't scroll far enough. If you scroll past all of the lectures, what you'll find is that there's a set of labs. There are lab videos that were taken in the Laney lab room of myself. I went in and video recorded myself giving an overview of what we're doing in lab for the day, and then also video recorded myself setting up the lab equipment, showing you what the setup looks like, and show examples of me collecting data in those labs. And so, again, the whole course is set up so that if we ever need to go entirely remote, we're set up for that. It won't be any scrambling around. Everything is already in place to allow for that. And again, that could show up in an emergency situation. If something comes up and you're not able to come into class for a week or something, it's a way for you to stay caught up in the course. And speaking of staying caught up, so I have to give my my recommendation. Students often say, how do you succeed in these courses? How do you succeed in the physics series 4A, 4B, 4C? And I always say, stay caught up. So the real key here is don't fall behind. If it says that we're going to do chapter 33 this week, make sure that you get yourself through chapter 33. Make sure that you're coming to class, that you're listening to lectures, that you're paying attention, you're asking questions when they come up, and that you're immediately, getting back. Chapter 32, I guess, is where we start. you're getting back to looking at the homework examples for whatever chapters we're looking at. Same thing with the lab. When we have, the lab reports are due the week after we do the lab. So, and my encouragement to students is always, hey, go right home and write up that lab report. So when you're in lab, what you'll be asked to do is, in lab, you'll be setting up the lab, carrying out all of the measurements, and carrying out all the calculations. Now I know sometimes students feel like, oh, I'm in lab, why am I in lab? Shouldn't I be homeworking on this? And my answer is no. Because if you're in the lab and questions come up, you're easily able to take a few more measurements. But if you've gone home and you find out that you took all the wrong set of measurements, the data doesn't apply, there's not much you can do. And so students, I'm going to ask everybody to stay in lab. In fact, what I'll do is I'll ask your lab group, each lab group, before leaving, to show me their results for the day. So everything should be completed in terms of all the measurements have been made, all the calculations have been carried through, and you can see that what you've come up with is kind of plausible. It kind of makes sense that there don't seem to be any serious concerns about the measurements that were made or the calculations that were carried out. And that's really for your advantage. Again, if you go home, find out that you didn't take the right set of measurements, or if you've gotten confused about how to carry out the calculations, there's really not so much you can do at home. All right. So make sure that you're completing the labs in the lab while you're there with your lab group. So with your lab group, you're going to have other people all working together to get the best, most reliable set of measurements for that day. The midterms. So there are actual dates set up for the 4 midterms that we'll be taking. These are all Wednesdays, I think. I better go back and check and make sure on the schedule. But they should all be Wednesdays. And so on Wednesdays, we've got a couple of options here. We could either take the midterms during the class time period, which probably makes the most sense, or we could try and take them during the lab period and use the classroom. We'll talk more about that as the midterms come up and see which approach makes the most sense. The final exam is December 14th, looking ahead to the end of the semester, which is way out there. But the final exam is December 14th, and it's comprehensive. So it's going to include the whole course, chapters 32 through 44. Now, the way that the grades work, the grades are going to be based on the midterms, the final, and the labs. Now, what's missing here, and students go, well, what about the homework? And the homework is going to be really important. But for the homework, you're going to be responsible for making sure that you're doing the homework. I've graded homework in the past, so I've had semesters where I've included homework as part of the grading system, and what I've found is that there are solution manuals out there, which is fine. So I would say, in fact, find a solutions manual and make use of that. So find a solutions manual, but you've got to use them correctly. A solutions manual is only really useful if you don't look at it except when you absolutely need to. All right? And so when I did assign homework, and a lot of times it was just copied from solutions manuals. So students would fall behind and then copy from a solutions manual, and so that just made it really complicated in terms of the homework. So anyway, what I've done is I'm not going to be grading that homework, but instead I'm going to be asking you to take on that responsibility of making sure you're getting through the homework. If you have any questions, let me know. Okay, make sure you're working through the problems and getting any questions answered. So the midterms are going to make up 60%. There are 4 midterms. I'm not dropping any of them. And again, this is a grading policy where I used to allow dropping one of the midterms, But you know, I just felt like every part of the course is important. And so I don't want to drop any of the midterms. I think they're all important. And it's an added incentive for students to stay caught up. So yeah, the first midterm is going to count. And the second and the third and the fourth. So if an actual emergency comes up and you just can't make it to the midterm, then let me know as soon as you realize that there's some kind of a conflict going on. There's, you know, whatever the emergency is, and we'll find a way for you to take up a take a makeup midterm. Now, falling behind in the class is not, that does not make you eligible for a makeup exam. If you've just allowed yourself to fall behind in the class, or it's really got to be some kind of an emergency if you're thinking, well, I'll get a makeup for that midterm. Okay, so again, make sure that you're staying caught up in the course. Do not fall behind, not even a week. Make sure that you're staying week by week caught up. So that's what the grades look like. And then for an A in the course, that we're going to set that up front at 85 to 100, B 70 to 85, C is 50 to 70. Now, what happens at the end of the semester is that I curve those a little bit, and by curving the grades, what I mean is I lower the bar just a bit. And so if you work all the way through the semester, and you end up at 84% overall, almost certainly you're going to get an A. So I do lower it. You know, right now I'm saying an A is at 85, but it's going to get lowered to 84. Could get lowered to 83.5, but don't count on it. In fact, don't even count on the 84. Just think, I got to get an 85 if I want an A, and I got to get a 70 if I'm going to get a B, and I got to get a 50 if I'm going to pass the class. All right, but there will be a little bit of leniency thrown in there, again, at the end of the semester. Now, sometimes students look at this and they go, well, wow, that's kind of a really spread out grading scale. And I mean, you guys are all science and engineering majors, and I think you're going to see more and more in your courses, if you haven't seen this already. Certainly, your upper division work, you'll find out these are pretty typical grade scales. Exams in these courses are going to have averages, I don't know, in the 60s, right? 65 or something as an average. And so what happens is a student who's been thinking, who's kind of learned that a 65 means they're failing the course, here, 65, along with some really good lab work, could put you in the B range. Okay, so, and by allowing a broader grade scale, it actually allows to make the exams a little more challenging and to have the class spread out a little bit more. Instead of having all the grades packed together in one narrow region, this allows more of a spread, so you can see, you can easily see differences more so in the grades. All right, on the right side here is just the homework stuff. We've talked about those, so let's go on and look at the last item. And the last item is the schedule for the course. And we stick with this pretty strictly. So if you take a look at Canvas, for example, now Canvas is not organized by week. Instead, I've organized Canvas by chapter. And so, but if you look at the Canvas list of lectures and labs, you'll be able to see that the dates line right up. And pretty much for every day we're meeting on Canvas, there are going to be two 50-minute lectures that have been posted there for the day. So on campus, we would have two 50-minute in-person, on-campus live lectures going on, but Canvas is set up to follow that very same schedule. So let's see, there should be 4 midterms here. There should be one every 4 weeks. Here we go, week 4, there's the first midterm. So, write that in your calendar. See, Physics 4C, I've got a midterm in 4 weeks on this day. and then open up blocks of time where you're going to be able to go in and work on Physics 4C. Going through the textbook, working on homework. So first midterm is after 4 weeks, second midterm after 8, third midterm after 12, fourth midterm after 16, and then, there's that final exam. And everything right now is scheduled for the exams as 10 a.m. to 12 noon. So that's the expected time for this. And then for each one of these weeks too, there's a lab. Now in Canvas, this is listed as Lab 1, Lab 2, Lab 3, Lab 4, Lab 5, Lab 6. Now what we had pointed out, let me jump back just a bit to the syllabus. There's a final exam, that's 20%. The midterms, now think about this, the midterms, each of the 4 midterms is 15% of the overall grade. So, and that seems about right. A midterm should really count for something, and so that very first midterm, you want to get in, and do well. Do well on the first midterm and set up a real tradition or a habit, I guess. Set up a real habit of getting in and staying caught up and coming into office hours with whatever questions you've got, and get that habit of success started early. Make sure that you're staying caught up. The one other item I wanted to mention for the labs is that I do drop one of the labs. And so what happens is during the course of a semester, semesters are many, many weeks, many or maybe most students in the class will have some kind of a conflict that comes up. Either they get sick, or they have an interview, or they have a meeting with a counselor, or something comes up where they just can't attend lab for that day. And so what I've done to try and address that is just drop one lab. And so I will drop the lowest lab score. Now, of course, you're encouraged to come to all of the labs through the entire semester. That would be ideal. But, if for whatever reason you miss a lab, you're okay if you miss one. If for some reason you end up missing more than one, you really should talk with me and let me know what's going on, what kind of an emergency has come up. We can take a look at that. Now the lab reports, I think I mentioned. So if we go back to the schedule, so here is our first lab. That's on August 24th. When is my lab report due? It's due the following week, so it's going to be due on Wednesday, August 31st. Now, I would say just get the lab report written up. Don't wait a week to get the lab written up. Go ahead and get it written up. These are going to get submitted to Canvas anyway. So the lab reports are going to get submitted to Canvas. And the real feature there, the nice feature is Canvas is set up, I think, pretty nicely so that I can make a number of legible comments that you can actually read. And then, once the lab report's turned in, I'm just kind of going through my list of things that need to be graded almost every day. So it's pretty quick, a day or two, and you'll get feedback on the lab report. And I mean, even offer the option to students that if you turn your lab reports in early, then there's a good chance I will get those graded within a day or two and make comments. And as long as we haven't hit the due date yet, you're allowed to make corrections or adjustments to your lab and resubmit. And I will regrade those changes. It's worked out really well the last several semesters. So you can get feedback on your lab reports. And that means when you turn in the lab report, make sure that you've thought through everything very carefully. And then I can make comments if there's a few things missing, and you'll have a chance to go back and recover those lost points. Anything else we need to talk about here? I think we hit everything. I'm really, looking forward to the semester. Physics is really a lot of fun. Physics 4C is maybe my favorite course. Don't tell Physics 4A or 4B. There's just a lot of really amazing, surprising topics that we're going to be taking a look at this semester. So again, whatever questions come up, stop by office hours. I'm going to try and get some office hours set up even before the semester starts. So I know a couple students already have been going online, looking at the getting started videos, which were kind of left over from last semester. And so I'll get this video posted. It's going to be there. You guys are going to be watching this. And questions come up. I'll set up some office hours, some Zoom, some conference Zoom office hours, probably the week or two before the semester starts. And you guys are welcome to stop by. Maybe we'll get to know each other a bit and ask whatever questions you have about the course. Or you can jump right in and start looking at some of the physics. So again, I'm looking forward to the semester. Welcome to, welcome to Physics 4C. There we go. Hope to see all of you in the near future.